Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into Morons and a Mic. I'm your host, Cody McCauley. As always, with me, I've got Ted Kinney, and we also have our first guest of the show, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yo, what's going on? How you guys doing today?
Pretty good. Give us your name and your story.
Yes, sir.
Mike.
My name's Hutchinson Brown, and I'm a teenager trying to make his way in the fantasy football space. I'm on Twitter. I'm at HutchinsonB_FF. I do content across the industry for football guys for DLF. I do stuff on my Twitter, and me and Luke Sawhook. If you know Luke Sawhook, he's at Luke Sawhook on Twitter. Me and him host Hooked on Fantasy, our little fantasy football podcast. So go check that out. But yeah, I've been doing this for a handful of years, and I'm really appreciative you guys are having me on the show as your first guest. I'm really, really excited.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Uh, to start us off today, we're going to go over some rookies and talk about Dynasty and how they're looking. So let's start off with some quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Let's start off with Caleb Williams. Talk to me, Teddy, a little bit about Caleb Williams and how you're feeling about him.
So I feel better about Caleb than I did coming into the year. And you can see him in games setting protections and doing things, which is exceedingly rare for a rookie to be trusted with that by a coaching staff. Ultimately, what Caleb is struggling with, I think in his first game you saw nerves. He missed a handful of passes that he does not normally miss deep, high, like he just overthrew them. His interior offensive line is awful. I mean, if you watch the 4th and 1 speed option in this last game, you'll see the entire offensive line on the ground, which is bad. You don't want that. Also, Shane Waldron, I've mentioned this before, but his offense last year with the Seahawks looked a lot like this offense. The difference was that he had a QB in Geno Smith who has grown capable. He's an excellent pocket navigator, right? Like, Caleb Williams is a rookie. For all he is, he's not that yet. I'm not saying he won't be that, but he's not yet that. So Geno Smith papered over a lot of cracks in this offense as far as a lack of answers for the blitz and a lack of easy buttons that Caleb Williams is just not quite yet capable of doing simply because of a lack of experience. Also, why are we drawing up touches for DeAndre Carter? I don't understand this. This is the year 2024, right? Somebody explain this to me.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Williams, I like to see what we saw last week in the first couple weeks. First 2 weeks, he had no completions of 15 or more yards in the first 2 games. This past week, we saw 4. And obviously, there were some rookie mistakes in there, but there were also some Caleb Williams-esque plays. I specifically want to highlight one. I posted on Twitter earlier this week, or actually, by the time we're recording this today, probably the time this post, maybe earlier in the week, I don't know. But he saw immediate pressure from Latu, the rookie Latu. And he makes a really good spin move to escape the pressure, rolls to his left, and throws a bullet, like a sidearm bullet, to Cole Kmet for a first down. And that's the type of play we see from him at USC. And he had a couple plays just like that. And it was incredibly impressive to see those kind of plays start to slowly come through and start to slowly break out. And I think sooner or later we'll start to see more and more of those plays come together. And as a result, we'll see a better rookie season from Caleb Williams. So I think this week was really encouraging. But like you said, Ted, the offensive line it's incredibly bad.
Yeah. All right, talk to me about Michael Penix. Now that Kirk Cousins is looking a little bit better.
I mean, looking at what he's done, he hasn't done anything so far. Obviously, Kirk Cousins has been the quarterback starting for the Falcons. But looking at what Cousins has done so far, the first couple of weeks were like really, really shaky. We saw some really inconsistent decision making. He was a statue in the pocket, was not able to move. But I think we saw some things that were better for him this past week. I think the decision making was on point, especially against a really good Kansas City defense. There were a lot of impressive throws from Cousins this past week. And I also like the mobility. He didn't get a ton of opportunities to do so. The Atlanta Falcons offensive line, even with injuries, were overall not too bad at pass protecting. Kirk Cousins went under pressure, was able to roll out, was able to make moves and make decisions outside the pocket. And that was something we did not see in the first 2 weeks. But it's something we saw in week 3. It's also something we saw from Aaron Rodgers in week 3, too. It's something we saw from him in his Thursday Night Football game. And we saw the mobility. We saw the rushing attempts. We saw running outside the pocket. And maybe that's the same thing that's happening for Cousins here. And if that's the case, we're going to see this Falcons offense continue to get better, continue to grow. And Michael Penix is going to continue to stay on the bench.
Yep. So that's I agree with everything you said. In week 1, Cousins looked. I mean, he couldn't run. He just couldn't do it at all.
He couldn't even plant.
No. And in week 2, we still saw a little bit of the issues with planting. But you mentioned Rodgers, and people group them in together. But here's the other part: is that Rodgers, first of all, he was more mobile than Cousins, even at the advanced age
Mhm.
that he was when he tore his Achilles. But also, Rodgers tore his like 2 months before Cousins tore his, which means that Rodgers is 2 months further along in that recovery process. So now, people thought, oh, maybe after that first game, especially, they thought, oh, maybe the Falcons saw Cousins' Achilles and they weren't comfortable with it, and that's why they spent that top 10 pick on Michael Penix Jr. It became this big thing across Twitter or X. But after the last couple weeks, if you're the Falcons, I mean, you have to be encouraged by the improvement in Cousins' play, and you have to be thinking that he's going to get to the Cousins that we saw, last year with the Vikings, where there was more playmaking than Cousins' previous iterations.
Yeah. Give me Perk Cousins back.
Yeah. Well, we
Yes,
got
sir.
Kirk Herbert for a little while until that ankle. Anyways,
Hey, maybe Aaron Rodgers hooked him up with his magical medications.
yeah.
All
Maybe,
right.
yeah, maybe.
Now this guy's one of your favorites, Teddy. I know. Bo Nix. It's an Oregon guy.
hmm He's flashing the rookie card.
Yep.
Flashing the rookie
Fine.
card. Love
Oh,
it.
yeah. Yeah. So Bo Nix, the first couple weeks were really rough, but they mentioned, Sean Payton's really famous for his like large scale formation changes and stuff like that. And there were so many times in the first couple weeks where the play clock would be down to like 15 seconds when they were, breaking the huddle and getting the line of scrimmage with like 10 seconds left. That's not a lot of time for any quarterback to, survey the defense and try and figure out what's going on, but let alone a rookie. Yes, Bo Nix is further along in his development than most rookies because he did set the NCAA record for, starts. So he's seen a lot more than a guy like maybe Anthony Richardson, who started like 8 games in college or something like that. But at the same time, he is still a rookie. So after the second game, when that offense looked completely overwhelmed, Sean Payton did mention that, hey, maybe we got to cut back on those formation shifts. And the offense looked a lot more cohesive, and it felt like they were more comfortable. And I'm not saying that the Bucs are a great defense, but they do have some good players. And overall, you just want to see a rookie quarterback look comfortable. If they look comfortable, that's a good sign for the future, especially a guy like Nix that, Sean Payton doesn't want. He doesn't need a QB like Caleb Williams who's going to make something out of nothing. He wants a QB to point and shoot, like go here with the ball. And like Nix is good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Hutch, would you say that he knows a thing or two because he's seen a thing or two?
Sean Payton.
No, Nix.
Oh, Nix, yeah. I mean, Nix has plenty of experience playing college. And here's the thing about Bo Nix. I mean, Ted, it seems like you were a big fan of his coming out. Given, I mean, he's an Oregon guy, obviously. I was a little concerned with him as a prospect. I thought the pick at 11 was a little concerning, but I'm impressed with what we saw in preseason. The first couple weeks were really, really bad, but I was able to go back, and I wasn't able to watch this full game live, but I was able to go back and watch every snap he took. And I love what you said, Ted, about the comfort. Bo Nix was incredibly comfortable in this offense this week, and it really, really looked like it. He made some really nice throws. He just looked like you said, the offense looked very cohesive, and we love to see that. And also something for fantasy specifically, Bo Nix is a really good runner. I mean, right now he is sixth in the NFL in rush attempts. He is seventh in the NFL in rushing yards among quarterbacks. And for fantasy football, that's going to be something that changes the game. I mean, right now he is over 100 rushing yards in 3 weeks, and that's incredibly impressive. That's going to add fantasy value for him. So people who talk about Caleb Williams about Bo Nix not having fantasy football upside just because he's more of a system like quarterback, that might not be true. If you get him a couple receivers and he's able to develop into a better quarterback, and then you've got the rushing upside, the dude's got fantasy football potential for sure.
He has 2 rushing touchdowns in 3 games. I mean, that
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
that's matchup tilting right there.
Yeah.
From a QB spot.
Yes, 100%.
And talking about rushing, this was one of my picks at the beginning of the year. We took some crazy spicy picks, and one of mine was that Jaden Daniels was going to be a top 5 quarterback by the end of the year. And
Very bold.
real bold. A lot of that was based on his rushing ability. But what are you guys seeing so far with Daniels? Obviously, he plays tonight, so we don't have that game.
Yeah.
But so far through 2 weeks.
So far through 2 weeks, I think he looks like a rookie to me. It seems like the offense is trying to keep him comfortable. There's been a lot of shorter passes, a lot of, quick throws. And Jaden Daniels, yeah, to me, he just looks like a rookie who's having a hard time going through all his reads. And when he doesn't see the first, second read, he's running the football. And while for the real life NFL, it's not always the best thing to do for the offense, but for fantasy, we love it. I mean, the first game I think he had 80 plus rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and he ended up having a crazy good fantasy week, even though he almost did nothing as a passer. And then week
Mm-hmm.
2, the rushing touchdowns didn't come. It wasn't really there for fantasy. And week 3, we haven't seen yet. I'm expecting a big game against the Bengals, who are missing 2 of their defensive tackles and overall have been weak on the secondary side of the football. But Daniels overall for me, he looks like a rookie, but he's running the football, so he's really, really good for fantasy.
And I agree with all of that. My concern for his long term, at least this year's passing upside, is Cliff Kingsbury. I saw this crazy statistic that out of just the wide receiver targets for the Commanders, 34.6% of their wide receiver targets have been behind the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
That's crazy. That's stupid. Like Cam Taylor-Britt is getting up there and saying how, basic they keep it and all this stuff. And he's right. Like I was hoping that Cliff Kingsbury would evolve from what he was with the Cardinals. He's not. The run game looks very well designed, but he's still having those same issues with keeping his personnel in static places. Like, Terry McLaurin is by far the best receiver on that team. It is unacceptable for that offense that he has 39 passing yards through 2 weeks. Or 39 receiving yards, I'm sorry, not passing yards. He's not throwing the ball. It's unacceptable that he has like 39 receiving yards through 2 weeks. And they're just not giving him opportunities. They're deploying him out on the left receiver spot, just like they did with Prime D-Hop during Kyler Murray's time and Cliff Kingsbury's time there. They're just not making very good use of their personnel. And Kingsbury's offense still looks way too much like it did with Arizona, where the passing game, I mean, it's lifted straight out of the Texas Tech playbook.
Yeah, I remember with Kingsbury in Arizona, is Rondale Moore. His ADOT was like negative yardage in the Kingsbury offense because all they would do is throw him screens and get him behind the line of scrimmage. And that's exactly what they're doing here. They're trying to keep Jay Daniels comfortable by giving him short options and giving him screen passes and making the receivers do the work. And that's going to be helpful for him in his development to keep him comfortable, but it's not working for the offense. This offense is not going to be able to put up points consistently if they're doing that because their offense is going to be slow, it's going to be boring, and defenses are going to be able to catch up with it quick.
There's no chunk plays. No. That's what Mina Kimes was saying. Is Jaden Daniels at his LSU, he threw a beautiful deep ball.
Yep.
Like you can scheme guys up to be one-on-one outside. De'Ami Brown, one of the other Washington receivers, that's what his skill is winning outside the numbers on deep stuff. Why are they not throwing deep? Like Jaden Daniels is very good at throwing deep. Now I'm not saying that it's the basis of the offense or anything, but they should be scheming up at least a couple one-on-one shots downfield per game.
Yeah, and hopefully we see some of that tonight.
Hopefully, yeah.
One more thing before we move on, just to keep in mind, right now, as of this morning, he is 4th in the league among quarterbacks in rushing yards, and that's without having played tonight.
Yeah.
So he'll be second by the end of the night. I think he's only like 17 behind Kyler Murray, who's in second right now.
I believe
so
that's
the kid
correct.
can run.
Yeah, he should be at least competing for first in rushing yards after tonight's game.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if he's ever going to catch Jackson with the way that offensive line is blocking. He has to run for his life on nearly.
Yeah, he's about 100 yards behind Lamar right now.
Yeah, Daniels have to have a huge game in order to get past Lamar, but he'll be up there. He'll be close.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's go through some other rookies. Jonathan Brooks.
All right,
it's nice to see Bryce Young not on the field.
Yes, I saw the crazy statistic today of the EPA per play for the Panthers offense with Bryce Young over the last 2 years. Well, year and 2 games, it's been negative 0.24, I think it was. And with Andy Dalton, it's at plus 0.18, which means that offense is almost a full half point half point of EPA per play better with Andy Dalton over Bryce Young. Like this offense under Young looked terrible, and it affected everybody. Like Cody, one of my bold predictions was that Deontay Johnson would be a top 10 receiver this year, and I said that because I thought he would be fed targets like at a crazy rate because there's not a lot else at the receiver position. Dave Canales, what he did with
like
Seattle
he was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So it was nice to see that, and like Chuba Hubbard had 114 yards the other day, and Chuba Hubbard, he's a fine player, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that Jonathan Brooks is probably a better player. So even though Brooks didn't play, I'm going to say stock up for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more there. And I would be slightly cautious. I mean, Andy Dalton's not going to go out there and throw 3+ touchdowns every game.
Oh, no.
That's just not what we're going to see. I believe that as we move forward and as the teams now have game film on him and they understand his tendencies with the football more with the Carolina Panthers, they might understand how to game scheme against him more. We might see some more struggles from Andy Dalton moving forward. But I would agree, based off this game, we can guess that the offense is going to be better with Andy Dalton. He's a serviceable veteran who knows the game inside now and who seems to be a better player than Bryce Young at this point in both their careers. And I love what you're saying about Jonathan Brooks. I think he's going to be a fantastic asset when he's on the field. He's been my guy for me this year. I loved him coming out. And the thing is, we can guess that because, one, Dave Canales, we know he likes to target the running back position. I mean, last year he gave Rachaad White a boatload of targets, involved him in the receiving game, made him the workhorse back. And Andy Dalton, one, when I was watching him play, he didn't look mobile. There were very few times I saw him escaping out of the pocket. He's a older veteran quarterback. He's not going to be somebody that's running outside the pocket, making those plays. When he sees pressure, he's dumping off. He gave an 18% target share to his running backs this past week. That is an incredible target percentage for a running back. If Jonathan Brooks were to get on and see 10 to 15% target share, that's going to be really good for fantasy football, especially if he's getting the bulk of the rushing work. And that probably won't happen week one when he plays, like the first week he plays, but eventually down the stretch, he's somebody that could be great. So if you can sneak Jonathan Brooks off a roster, that is a great idea right now.
I'd be targeting him for the second half.
Most definitely.
He and Todd Gurley tore their ACLs on the same day in their last day in college.
Yep.
And Todd Gurley missed a couple games. He got ramped up, and then over the last half of the season, I think he was like a top 10 running back. And just like you said, I definitely don't expect this offense to be putting up 37 points a game like they did against the Raiders. But those first couple games were so frustrating for the Panthers because Thielen and Deontay Johnson were open. They just couldn't hit them. And the offensive line, I know people want to say that, the surrounding pieces of the Carolina Panthers were so bad. The Panthers' offensive line allowed the fewest pressures in the league last week against the Chargers. And that's a pretty decent pass rushing team. And then they followed it up this week by, they really kept Andy Dalton clean against a very good Raiders defense.
I think if I remember correctly, Andy Dalton only took 2 sacks. If I remember correctly, I don't think he was sacked much. I mean, watching the game too, most of the plays he wasn't running, he wasn't getting hit, he was clean in the pocket. It was good to see.
And if they can keep him clean, for Brooks to pay off at what you probably bought him for and to look good, you don't need it to be, and Deontay Johnson too, but you don't need that offense to be a top 5 offense. You just need it to be a functional NFL offense, And that's what it looked like the other day. It looked like a functional NFL offense.
All right, we're gonna move along here to Braylon Allen, who, I'll be honest, he could definitely start for about 2/3 of the rest of the teams in the NFL.
Yeah. I am so happy with Braylon Allen right now. He was my RB1 coming out. He really was. I was a massive Braylon Allen stan. I was one of the Braylon Allen guys on Twitter who continually defended him while I was getting hated for it. Because Braylon Allen, for some reason, I didn't get it. Because like he tweeted, I don't know if you guys saw his tweet.
Yeah.
He was like, people wanted to see me run in my underwear to determine if I was good at football. And I was like, that's exactly what I've been saying, bro. When you watch this kid on film, he's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he dominated the college football at like 17 years old. The dude was dominant from day one and continued. He's still only 20 years old and just throws defenders on the ground. I mean, I don't remember if you saw the one play, a D lineman came storming through the line of scrimmage, hit him hard in the backfield, and he just threw him down and then walked over him and just like got a few yards on that gain. It was just absolutely incredible. Allen has been a fantastic player so far. And like you said, Cody, he could start on about 2/3 of NFL rosters right now. He would be, I just wish he went to Dallas. Really wish he went to Dallas.
Same. I was going to say the same thing, Hutch.
I'm surprised he didn't, Jerry Jones is a freak. He likes watching people in their underwear, All right. With that, we're going to go to Bucky Irving, another Duck. I know, Teddy, you love your
I'll
Ducks,
talk about this one. So I remember watching Bucky in school and being very impressed with his contact balance, his decisiveness. When we got drafted by Tampa Bay, immediately I thought, okay, this he might actually come for Rachaad White's job, because Rachaad White, when you watch him run, it's not decisive, and he's been a very inefficient runner for the last his whole career. Like last year, he averaged, I think it was like 3.4 yards per carry or something like that. And the only reason that he was fantasy viable was because of the amount of work he got. He got a ton of touches in both the pass and the run game, which kept his fantasy stock afloat. After they drafted Bucky Irving, like Rachaad White, for all of his faults, like rushing yards over expected, he's among the worst in the league. But receiving yards over expected, he's one of the best in the league. So he is a very good pass catcher. It's legitimately, like I'm not saying Bucky's going to take that role, because I don't think he will, because just Rachaad White is just so good at it. But to make Rachaad White pay off, he had to keep that rushing work. And Bucky Irving is a better runner than he is. And we see that right now. Bucky Irving is, I think, second in the NFL in yards per carry, and Rachaad White is like 33rd. Like, this last game, and it might be because of the groin injury, but Rachaad White didn't get a lot of first and second down work. It was a lot of Bucky Irving. And even in the game they were trailing, he still had 9 carries for 70 yards? Like, he was still doing well. And if you listen to the Bucs coaches during the preseason and stuff like that, they talked about how decisive a runner Bucky was, and that good contact balance. Like, he's not a particularly big guy. He's not a particularly fast guy. But he's somebody like, Kamara is not particularly fast either, but he plays faster than he is because of his elite contact balance. And Bucky, I'm not saying he's Alvin Kamara by any stretch of the imagination, but he's in the same vein where he has the contact balance to make himself play bigger and faster than he is on paper.
Yeah, I totally couldn't agree more with anything you really just said. I mean, Bucky Irving seems to be the runner of this team. I mean, Rachaad White, like you said, has been horrifically inefficient with the football in his hands in the backfield. It's just, he is someone you want to get in space in the receiving game, because once he is in space, once you give him a little bit of momentum, he can do some damage. But behind the line, he doesn't work there. Bucky Irving has dominated in that area, and like you said, the contact balance is elite. I also love the quickness he has. His ability to make quick cuts, make quick decisions behind the offensive line and find the hole. It's incredibly impressive. And he's had a couple jukes that are just nasty. I remember seeing this past week against Denver, like, he was slowed down in front of a linebacker and he just made some nasty cut, and it was just linebacker went straight on his face on the floor. Like, it was nasty work by Bucky Irving. He's someone that can make those quick cuts, make you look silly, and it's incredibly impressive to see him so far. For now, he's not really relevant for fantasy because he's only getting like 10 carries a game, and that's just not enough with no receiving work to be relevant. That's going to be very touchdown dependent to get 10 points. But he's someone that's very relevant for this Bucs offense, at least for now. But for fantasy, he's just not startable unless White were to go down.
For Dynasty, though, he is somebody that you could probably add for cheap, because Rachaad White, I believe this is his third year, correct me?
This is his third year, correct, yes.
So, running backs typically are cycled through, and, Bucky Irving especially, he is somebody that at Oregon, he did catch passes. He has receiving chops. Like, it's not like, we're talking about, somebody that is 250 pounds and can't catch passes. So there's a possibility that, the Bucs see this rushing inefficiency from White, and they see, Irving putting up twice the yards per carry. And at the end of next year, maybe they decide to move on. And I would also like to point out that these rushing heavy guys like, Derrick Henry, they're very game script dependent. And against the Broncos, that game script was about as bad as it possibly could be for the Bucs, because they were behind pretty much the whole game by multiple scores. So Bucky didn't get a lot of carries simply because of that. Now, in a more positive game script, maybe the Bucs take an early lead, maybe he gets more carries, but he is somebody that I am intrigued by, especially considering that, as a 4th round pick behind Rachaad White, he didn't have a lot of value at the beginning of the season.
Well, it remains to be seen. We'll have to see if the Bucs can get into a situation where they can just run out the clock. Let's move on to receivers. Obviously, you're not going to get these guys from anybody, but if you own them or if you're managing them, you're happy. Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Odunze look like absolute studs.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Neighbors leads the league in receiving.
He's wide receiver 1 in fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's the like, I mean, look, I was a Harrison guy coming out. I loved Marvin Harrison, but the way Neighbors has played, I mean, I tweeted. I think he already might be a top 10 receiver in the league. Like the way he's been playing, his like literally, there's nothing in his game that is wrong. When you look at everything he's done so far, he gets open, he catches the football, he makes massive, miraculous catches. He's so physical after the catch. He's fast. He's explosive. There's nothing he's done wrong, and all he's done is earn an elite target share in this offense. I just can't find anything wrong with him. He's a perfect wide receiver, and he's someone that for fantasy football is. I mean, look, there's gonna be some bad games. Daniel Jones is gonna have some games where he fumbles and throws 2 picks, or has some messy performances, and that's going to impact Malik Neighbors negatively. But we're going to see some games where he has like we saw in week 2, 18 targets, and he's going to absolutely dominate. Or this past week where he had 2 touchdowns. We're going to see some games where he blows up. And I think he's approaching wide receiver 1 status rest of season. Like, that's where we're at with him.
I agree completely. I do want to just talk briefly about Odunze because the other two, I mean, that we were promised a generational receiving prospect class, and I think we got it.
Yeah, we got it.
So those other two are pretty, I mean, they're crushing it. But Odunze, the first couple weeks, he was a little quiet in the box score. But if you watch, he was getting open. Like Odunze was getting open. And then in week 1 especially, he was getting open. In week 2, he was dealing with that knee injury that I thought would keep him out for a couple weeks. And then he comes out, he plays nearly every snap. And, if you watch that, he doesn't have quite the same burst that he usually does in that game. But as the season progresses, I think he's going to get that burst back more and more and more. In addition, obviously, the rapport with Caleb Williams is going to go up. Hopefully Shane Waldron realizes what he has because he had 11 targets this week. And I think you pointed this out on Twitter. He was a couple better throws away from having a truly monster game. Like Caleb just missed him on a couple deep balls downfield. And if he catches even one of those, we're talking about 150, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the kid was so
completely
good
changes the game.
that, I got him in every Dynasty league because I traded up to get him. I was fine with Harrison, Neighbors, or Odunze, but I figured Odunze was the cheapest because of the, everybody thinking DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. Well, Keenan Allen is now dealing with the same heel injury that he missed the last 4 games of the last year's Chargers season with. And, he's 32 years old. Like, I think that Odunze is going to be wide receiver 2 at worst in that offense soon. And there's a possibility, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there is a possibility that he ends up wide receiver 1 over DJ Moore.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Again,
he was drafted 9th overall. He was drafted to be a monster, and he could totally do that.
And you've been telling people to go get him for the last 2 weeks, so hopefully people listened.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Brian Thomas Jr.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I absolutely loved Brian Thomas Jr. in week 1. Specifically, the last 2 weeks, he's also been great. He looks good. But I just specifically love what we saw in week 1. 4 receptions, 47 yards, a touchdown. Now, that's mostly a humble stat. You're like, okay, very solid performance. That kid is trusted by that offense. Did you guys see the touchdown in week 1 where the anticipation on that throw from Trevor Lawrence to trust Brian Thomas that he would be where he needed to be was absolutely phenomenal. Mm-hmm. It was phenomenal. The where Brian Thomas was, where Trevor Lawrence threw it, and where he caught it, the trust level was insane. And then they threw it up to him in the end zone, a bomb down the field, 1-on-1 with arguably the best corner in football, Jalen Ramsey. And because Jalen Ramsey decided to assault him, he didn't get a touchdown, but it was a call for pass interference. They got in the red zone then. But Brian Thomas was trusted by that team. He was incredibly efficient with his routes. He got open, and he's remained the same for the next couple of weeks. That Trevor Lawrence and this offense have just been disastrous. I mean, Trevor Lawrence right now, I think 3 weeks in, is at a 51. I mean, it might have been 2 weeks in. Was at a 51% completion percentage. Really, really bad. And and we'll see what happens tonight against Buffalo. But Buffalo's defenses look great. I'm not expecting a big game from Lawrence, but Thomas is great. It's just, it's the Lamborghini and the bad house meme right now for Brian Thomas. That's where we're at right now.
You pull up to your double wide in a Lamborghini.
For real. That's where we're at right now with Brian Thomas. That's perfect picture to describe what's happening.
It's crazy because, Brian Thomas and Trevor Lawrence, I don't know if you pay attention to Derek Harmon and stuff. Or Matt Harmon, I'm sorry. Matt Harmon.
I follow him a little bit. Of course.
Yeah, his reception perception profile and Trevor Lawrence's heat map that Derek Klassen put out they do their strengths
They
mesh
do,
well.
yeah. They do
Lawrence and
mesh.
Thomas.
100%.
But it's like I don't know what's going on with Doug Peterson in this offense. He's being cagey about who's calling plays. Is it him or is it Press Taylor? Press Taylor is not a good play caller. We saw it last year. In the first half of week one, first half of week one, that offense was one of the top like 3 in EPA per play. And then in the second half, they were the worst offense in the NFL in EPA per play. Like that doesn't usually happen without some change in like play caller or an injury or something like that. To go from being very, very good to being the worst in the league, it's quite a change.
All right, here's our first probably disagreement of this show, and that's AD Mitchell. Teddy, I know you're huge on him. I've been down all year just because of how Richardson's been playing. And now with Downs back, he only saw one target all game yesterday. Richardson is on the struggle bus. He's under 50% completion percentage in all 3 of his games. So tell me why I should still. Okay, tell me why you're still on AD Mitchell.
So AD Mitchell, he at Texas, he showed an ability to beat press coverage and man coverage at a very high level. He's big, he's fast. I still believe in Mitchell long term. If you have him in redraft, you can probably go ahead and drop him unless one of the other Colts receivers gets hurt, because he only had like a 9% snap share in this most recent game because Downs came back and pushed him off to the bench, which is not unusual for a rookie. We saw in week one, he was getting open in week one. Richardson missed him with a couple passes that he would have had an easy 100 and some odd yard and 2 touchdown game had Richardson made some better throws there. And then in week 2, we saw, again, he was getting open. He was getting a few targets, but he had a couple drops. And you can almost see his brain, as a rookie receiver in the NFL, you have a lot of stuff that you're learning. And if you're thinking too much, you're not focused on catching the ball. And you can see he is playing a little bit slow. He was swimming in week 2, which is not unusual for a rookie, but he is showing the ability to get open still. So long term, I'm not out on AD Mitchell. I think we have to temper expectations. Obviously, with Richardson completing 50% of his passes, it's going to be really hard to be a fantasy viable wide receiver when that's happening. But if Richardson figures it out, I think that AD Mitchell still has a role in this offense long term.
Yeah, totally. Mitchell has been getting open. Like the Mitchell has been getting open. He's been beating man coverage. He's been getting downfield. Richardson has missed him, and obviously Mitchell has had a couple drops. And so far, the connection just hasn't been there. But I with Ted here, I would trust the Mitchell because he's getting open and he's getting targets. It just hasn't converted yet. We just need to get 1 or 2 to convert, and then he'll get some momentum going. Because the thing is, like Ted said, I mean, he was 2 catches away from like a 100-yard 2-touchdown game this in week 1. Like we were there. I mean, he could have been the Alec Pierce of week 1. It was just they Richardson missed him twice. It was just really, really difficult to watch that. But yeah, I'm trusting Mitchell and just keeping him on my bench in fantasy and just keeping an eye on him.
Yep.
Just hoping and praying.
That
kind of like what I'm doing with Xavier Worthy, to please give me that week 1 performance again. Please.
I love Xavier Worthy. Love Xavier Worthy.
This last game, he had four receptions for 17 yards and 3 rushes for 13 yards.
Yeah,
they're trying to get him involved, and it's just they're not getting him in enough space, I guess.
Yeah, they're also not targeting downfield. It's just that the cover 2 is really, really tough, especially considering he's a smaller wide receiver. Big contested catchers aren't really going to be his thing. If you want to throw it to him downfield, he's going to have to be incredibly open. He's going to have to burn somebody. And with cover 2 that, Mahomes is facing a lot of these games, it's just not working. And as much as I love Xavier Worthy, he has limits to his game at that size, and it's just not going to work against cover 2. They're going to have to figure out a way.
Well, additionally, so I was on the Ringer this morning, and Patrick Mahomes' average depth of target it's falling not just against cover 2, but against all coverages. So it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit like what we mentioned with AD Mitchell, where rookie receivers, unless they're that generational style prospect that absolutely dominated in college football, like Neighbors, Odunze, Harrison, those guys were ready-made NFL players. Most receivers aren't coming out and ready to be, a number 1 receiver in any offense. You can use them for what they're good at, which is what Casey did with Worthy in week 1. They used him what he's good at, which is, again, in space. But is he going to be a big target earner in this offense? I just don't see it, especially not with Mahomes not pushing the ball downfield as much. Now, I do trust Andy Reid will scheme him up some touches. He'll still get some touches. You will still have some big games where he does pop off for like 2 long touchdowns, again, like in week 1. But I think that pretty much what you're going to see is 5 to 10 touches a game, you know. And if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's not going to pay off.
Agreed. And, there's nobody better than Andy Reid at manufacturing touches and adjusting your offense.
Yeah.
And I say that as a Niners fan crying over 2 Super Bowl losses. All right, let's talk about Blake Bowers. I mean, when you're playing this good as a rookie, you don't have to care about your hairline.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, Bowers has been, the thing is, like, I saw you guys writing in the notes, Bowers might be 10-1 in Dynasty by next week. Personally, for me, and I have receipts, I can pull up an article I wrote for Dynasty League Football months ago. This guy's been my Dynasty 10-1 before the draft. I have been all in on this guy, Dynasty 10-1 before the draft. He was the best tight end prospect we've ever seen. And in the draft, he went 13th overall to a Raiders offense that desperately needs receiving options outside Devontae Adams. Obviously, the offense we did not project to be very good, and we just didn't project this offense to be very, very prolific. But Bowers is just that good. Bowers is wide open at every area of the field. He's working downfield, intermediate routes, short routes, everywhere you get him the football. He's going to make plays and do damage to opposing defenses. He has looked like the best tight end in football so far this year, with Travis Kelce not playing very well. Mark Andrews looking questionable. Trey McBride, he's looking great, but Bowers is playing at a different level right now, and he is definitely the tight end 1 after the first couple weeks in Dynasty. There's no question about it. And you could argue he's tight end 1 rest of the season. Honestly, you could argue this year he's tight end 1.
Yeah.
It's just he's playing like the best tight end in football, and he's earning targets in the league, right?
Which is crazy to think about for a rookie tight end.
God,
because as we know, rookie tight end, they don't do anything.
Usually not, no.
Year 1.
It's crazy to me because, coming into the year, everybody was like, oh, tight end is so deep. You had all these options.
Yeah.
McBride, Kincaid, Kelce, Andrews, all these guys. And now all of them are either hurt or underperforming except for Bowers. And it's like that one meme where, they're in the church and there's, this person was tight end 1 and this person was tight end 1. And then there's a guy up in the pulpit. It was always Brock Bowers, tight end 1.
Yes, dude, they're all pointing the guns at each other. Yeah, that's exactly what this is right now. Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah. Would you agree that Bowers is who we had hoped Pitts would be?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. 100%. Bowers is that.
I mean, Pitts did have a pretty good game.
So I think
Pitts also had a fantastic rookie season. He had 1,000+ yards as a rookie.
Yeah.
It's just
1 touchdown.
Yeah, 1 touchdown. It has fallen apart since then, though, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm not even going to go over your second tight end you have on here, Teddy.
No, I want to.
Okay,
real quick.
fine.
Real quick.
Fine. Ben Sinnott.
It concerns me because guess what? Trey McBride, we talk about him, right? He's probably Dynasty tight end 2 behind Bowers.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Here we go again.
He was drafted in the second round to sit behind Zach Ertz on a Cliff Kingsbury offense. That sounds real familiar for Ben Sinnott, doesn't it? It took Zach Ertz getting hurt in order for McBride to come into the offense. And once McBride started going nuts, they realized what they had, and then they finally sat Zach Ertz. Well, guess what? Cliff Kingsbury gets hired as the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, and then they go out and they get Zach Ertz to start in front of their second-round pick at tight end. So it just concerns me that he's not going to get the playing time because this has happened before. We've seen this movie.
Yeah.
Unless Ertz gets...
Yeah, just a wild stat real quick I'll throw out. Among all tight ends who have played 20 snaps through the first 2 weeks of the season, Ben Sinnott, he is the 8th highest block percentage. He is blocking. He is not running routes. He is blocking. And that is not going to be good for fantasy. Zach Ertz is the receiving tight end right now, and that's incredibly unfortunate for his value. And it's an incredibly unfortunate decision by the Washington coaching staff. They should be getting Ben Sinnott the ball because he's a monster. He's a great player. But
yes.
And I agree with Ted here. I'm waiting it out with Ben Sinnott. It's probably not going to be this year. Maybe flashes towards the end of this year if Zach Ertz does get injured or Zach Ertz just slowly, fades out of the offense. But you're just not starting him
for now. Or if they get rid of Cliff Kingsbury, that would be
great
too.
That'd be great as well, yes. I don't see that happening.
I don't
see that happening either. All right. So watching the games yesterday, I had an idea for another section for the podcast, and it's called Past Glory, Present Story. And it revolves around players that, like Geno Smith a couple years ago. When do we start taking their production seriously when in the past they haven't done anything?
Hmm.
Versus when is it appropriate to move on from veteran players that have produced for us in the past but aren't playing up to that standard this year?
Ooh,
So I'm going to give you guys a couple of names and you guys tell me what you think.
gotcha.
We'll start off with Sam Darnold.
Yeah,
I,
Sammy Donald.
I think I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if we're gonna see this going forward, but going back and watching him play, he looks legit. He looks like he can manage this offense. And if Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson eventually come back from their injuries, he's going to be able to manage this offense. This offense is good enough where you got enough weapons. You got a solid offensive line. You got good running backs in the backfield. I think he's going to be a great game manager for this team and get him to enough wins to potentially even compete for the playoffs. I think
Yep.
he's legit.
I agree. Sam Darnold's always had the physical talent. What sometimes is the issue is between here, like it's a couple
Well,
throws
his
a game.
eyes too,
Like,
because
what is he doing?
sees ghosts.
Yeah, sees ghosts too. But Kevin O'Connell is a confirmed good coach. I know analysis, and just like Hutch said, the weapons on that team, the offensive line is fantastic. The run game is supporting him. The defense looks pretty legit. I mean, Brian Flores is a freaking master. So, he's not going to get into a situation, I think, where he's going to ask him, or not ask himself, but have too much put on his plate where he has to score 40.
Right.
I think that offense has been very good at staying on schedule and keeping him in situations where he doesn't feel like he needs to pull some crazy shit out of his out of his
Took
butt
us.
to make stuff happen and keep him in games.
All right. So Sam Darnold, fantasy viable for the rest of the year.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at him as a streaming option, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Next guy up, one of my favorites, Juwan Jennings.
Ooh.
So
Let me ask you guys a question first. Let me
Yeah.
ask you guys a question. Who has more fantasy points on the year, Juwan Jennings or Jay Jettis?
No, it's
Shocking.
It's Jay Jettis. No, it's Jay
It's
Jettis.
not.
Are you
It's
kidding?
Juwan Jennings.
That
Wow.
last
Juwan
game,
Jennings.
that game last night was so good.
game
He's like,
was
what?
that- yeah, that-
Juwan Jennings is wide receiver 4 in fantasy
Wow.
football right now.
Wow.
Yeah, Juwan Jennings has 4 more catches and 3 more yards.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's at least close, but man, that's
Oh, it's very
that
close.
is
But it's just
insane.
mind-boggling to me.
That is insane. Jefferson's been incredibly good this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But Jennings, again, that one game was enough to push him
He-
basically all by
He had
itself.
3 touchdowns.
Way up the ranks.
But how do you guys feel
11
about him
catches.
going forward?
I think
he's startable as long as Debo's out. Because if Debo's out, then you have more targets. Ayuk still got 10 targets last night. So, I mean, it's not like he's been phased out of the offense. But when Debo and Kittle come back and, McCaffrey eventually makes his way back, it's going to be less and less and less targets to go around. So I don't think Jennings is going to be, viable in fantasy football once those guys come back. If they stay hurt, then sure, obviously. But if you have Jennings on your team, now might be a great chance to go see what other people would give you for him. Because Debo isn't going to be out too much longer. That calf, they said, I mean, he's not been put on IR. He's missed 2 games. I don't think he's going to miss all that much more time. And, George Kittle, it doesn't sound like a hamstring is too bad. So, I mean, he might miss this week, upcoming, but I don't think he's going to miss, 2 more weeks or anything like that.
Yeah, I think Jennings is somebody like, remember how he viewed Alexander Madison when he was on the Vikings as the handcuffed Dalvin Cook, and when Cook went down, Madison was a stud. I think that's how we can view Juwan Jennings. If the receiving options go down here, he is a monster because, I mean, even when the guys are healthy, he's a good wide receiver. They depend on him in third downs. They give him good looks. He's just not targeted enough because while he's a good wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, George Kittle, and Chris McCaffrey are elite players. And as a result, Juwan Jennings kind of gets pushed out of the offense. But when he gets the opportunity, if there's injuries around him, he's going to be good for fantasy. So I think Juwan Jennings is a legit player. Will he be legit for fantasy the rest of the season? That's dependent on the health of the 49ers offense.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. This one hurts. This one hurts. Javonte Williams. Um, it in my mind, the past is the past,
I mean,
and
yeah.
I think you just move on at this
Yeah,
point.
I think he's done, honestly. I loved him coming out, man, and his rookie season was really
Mhm.
impressive, very flashy. He even with the offensive line not playing well, I don't see anything to be very impressed by with Javonte Williams. He looked awful. And I'm
Yeah,
Yeah,
done.
he's so far 24 rushes for 52
It's
yards on the year.
disastrous, man.
That's
It's disastrous.
not good.
Yeah,
no,
hashtag
and
not
I
good.
mean, look at all the running backs that the Broncos have. Even if Javante was playing reasonably well, which again he's not, they have Jaleel McLaughlin to steal passing work. They got Blake Watson in the draft this year, who is again a passing guy. They got Audric Estime, who yes he's on IR, but he's going to eventually come off IR. And if Javante Williams is still averaging just a hair over 2 yards a carry, I mean the coaching staff is probably going to look at that and go, hey, maybe Audric Estime can do better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it's just sad. Like you said, Hutch, it was so high on him coming out, and then that knee injury, they just destroyed that whole knee. Um, it's really sad when you see a career just go down like that.
100%.
Speaking of careers winding down, let's talk about Travis Kelsey.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
he's in trouble, man. I think he's seriously in trouble. When you look, because I don't know how much it's necessarily him, but when you look at the route trees, when you look at where their targets are coming from, Rashee Rice has taken Travis Kelsey's job. Like, this is seriously a real concern. Rashee Rice is dominating in the middle of the field. He's finding the open holes in the zone like Travis Kelsey would, and he's winning those slant routes. He's winning those drag routes. He's winning against man coverage in those situations, and he is taking all those targets over the middle. Mahomes has had a great relationship with him, dumping it off to the middle with him. And Travis Kelsey, as a result, is losing targets. And like we saw in the first half of the game, this past game, he had 2 targets in the half, and we were like 2 receptions for 4 yards. Okay, where's Travis Kelsey? He got 2 of the first 3 targets in the second half for the Chiefs, and then he disappeared, gone.
Disappeared again.
Gone. Nothing else. Like, it was just, he was gone. And it was like, where did he go? Rashee Rice took all his targets. It's just, it's really, really difficult for Travis Kelsey to do anything right now because everything he does, Rashee Rice is doing better. And Mahomes is giving
Yes.
him those targets. So Kelsey is someone I am complete red mode panic on. And I do not want to start him in fantasy football moving forward. I want to try to find another option if I can. I'm just done.
I agree completely because Rashee Rice is so good. That's his forte, is the middle of the field. His intermediate, short stuff. He's not great on the deep stuff. So it's not like, there are some receivers that can do all of the things, right? Like Justin Jefferson can do all of the things. So if you have a more limited player, if you have a Travis Kelsey that has to work the middle of the field, intermediate area, Jefferson can do something else. He can open up the deep section. You know what I mean? Like, he can do other things for you. Rice is working towards being that, but he's not there yet. So in order for you to maximize Rashee Rice, who, just like you said, is just simply better than Travis Kelsey at this point in their careers, well, you're going to have to take him and do the things with him that you would have done otherwise with Travis Kelsey. And just like we said, the Chiefs offense, they are just not throwing the ball downfield as much. Travis Kelsey, part of it, I think, is also that the Chiefs are trying to conserve him a little bit for the playoffs because they know they don't need him for the regular season. They're going to be just fine.
They're 3-0.
Exactly. He's 35 years old. They're undefeated. They still have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. They don't really need him to get through the regular season. Now, I do think that we'll see him more in the playoffs than we do in the regular season, but if you're a fantasy manager, you don't really care about the real NFL playoffs. You care about right now. You care about the regular season.
Week to week.
Yes, and I don't think that Kelsey is going to be consistent. And I think we saw it start a little bit last year where they
totally did.
phased him, reduce those snaps, and it's continued this year.
Father Time is
totally.
undefeated, and it's crazy to look at it and see, names like Colby Parkinson ahead of him on fantasy points, or Cole Kmet has more targets than Kelsey. Words I would not have said last year.
By the way, Cody, it's super depressing that I'm 35 and I'm talking about Travis Kelsey being 35 and pretty much being at the end of his useful career. And I'm like, now I feel old.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he's a football player.
We are
We're
old.
different. But I mean, it's Travis Kelsey. it doesn't seem like he's done, because when you watch his routes, he's getting open a decent amount of the time. He doesn't look washed. It's just that Rashee Rice is better. Rashee Rice currently
Yep.
leads I believe he leads the NFL right now in yards after catch and yards after catch per
Yeah.
reception too. Like, he's
And
dominating.
he's forced more missed tackles than any other receiver in the league.
Yep.
And here's something fun as a Chargers fan. The Chargers secondary misses tackles, and they play each other next week, so that's going to be great. I'm going to love it.
Rice is going to
It's fun.
kill. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We are running short on time, so let's just get your top 3 reactions from the games yesterday. We'll start with Hutchinson.
Yeah, my top 3 reactions. The first thing I want to talk about, I mean, I wrote down Rashee Rice taking Travis Kelce's job, but we just talked about that. The next thing I want to discuss is Mark Andrews. We didn't talk about that in like the most recent segment, but Mark Andrews, 21 snaps. He was outsnapped by Isaiah Likely, who had 39 snaps, and Charlie Kohler, who had 26 snaps. And here's the thing that's incredibly that's the thing even more concerning. Here's the thing that's even more concerning. In 11 personnel, which is 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 receivers on the field, Isaiah Likely took a lot more snaps this last week in 11 personnel than Mark Andrews did. That is incredibly concerning. If it's two tight ends in the field and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are both on the field, that's not a huge problem. That's not a huge deal. But if it's 1 tight end on the field and the Ravens are starting to choose Isaiah Likely more and more, that is incredibly concerning, because that means Mark Andrews is not on the field for more snaps. And the thing is, you could argue, like, the Ravens passed 15 times in this game. They were running the football at an incredible rate. They dominated Dallas Rush's defense, and the passing game just wasn't there. But the thing is, Mark Andrews, on his 21 snaps, ran 6 routes, and he just wasn't targeted at all. And it just wasn't there, and it hasn't been there much all season. Concerned. It's really is concerning for Mark Andrews right now.
I agree. After week 1, he still had good route participation, snap participation, all of that. And you could tell in week 1, the Chiefs were really focused on taking Andrews out of the game.
100%. Yep.
So I wasn't terribly concerned at that point.
Yeah, me neither.
But after 21 snaps and 6 routes, that's bad. That's concerning. That's really concerning.
Yeah, it's not good, man. Not good.
All right, Ted, give me one of your reactions.
All right, I'm going to go with 2. They're from the same game, so I'm just going to go with 2.
I guess we'll let that slide.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. It's our podcast. We can do what we want. So the first one is Brian Flores might well be the best defensive coordinator in the league. He completely dominated Bobby Slowick and the Texans offense. And I'm going to say Bobby Slowick because we know that CJ Stroud is a very good processor. So the problem is, for an offensive coordinator, when you have a QB that everybody knows is very, very good, you're going to get blamed when the offense doesn't do well. And the way to beat Brian Flores' defense is to win on 1st and 2nd down and prevent him from getting into too exotic of a look on 3rd down. And they were unable to do that. Now, a little bit of that's on Stroud. He hasn't played particularly well on 1st and 2nd down. But again, we know what Stroud is. So, I mean, Bobby Slowick still can't access that play-action passing game. The offense doesn't look very cohesive. And they had stretches like that last year too. But, last year it's like Stroud's a rookie, whatever. So, yeah, Vikings defense, big upgrade, downgrade to anybody that's facing them, especially in the passing game. And my second takeaway is Nico Collins. How high are we putting him in the Dynasty receiver ranks? Because even in a game that they looked disjointed, he had 10 targets, including, they targeted him after they pulled Stroud with 5 minutes left of the game. That last drive that they had, they targeted him on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th down in the end zone. Now they didn't hit it because, it was Davis Mills back there. But still, like, even in an off game for Nico Collins and the whole Texans offense, he still had 4 catches on 10 targets for 86 yards. An off game. Like, Nico Collins is awesome.
He has taken his game to a whole new level this year. I watch, I saw the stats and, the box scores and the numbers he's putting up yardage wise. I'm like, oh gosh, that's so good. Like, I was a big Tank Dell stan this offseason. I love Dell. And then I seen Collins putting up these numbers and it's like, oh shoot, like, he's legit putting up numbers. And I went back and watched his games and I was like, I don't think he looks this good last year. And I went back to last year to watch him play and I was like, no, he did not look this good last year. Nico Collins has taken his game in his 4th season to a whole new level. And it's incredible to see. He is the wide receiver 1 of the Texans and he is the dude. I mean, Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs are great receivers, but Nico Collins is putting himself, in the top 5 conversation in Dynasty right now for receivers.
Oh yeah,
He's putting himself in that
and
conversation.
you mentioned that he was taking his game to a new level, which is crazy because last year he still
He was
looked
amazing.
freaking
He was
awesome.
elite last
Like
year.
this year, he's just like you said, like top 5 receiver. And I did, everybody was worried about the snap share and distribution of targets between Diggs, Dell, and Collins. I wasn't terribly concerned about that. I was trying to get Collins everywhere I could because when you look at them, Diggs took a little bit of a step backwards last year. And now it's probably because of age. He's a good enough route runner. He's not going to fall off a cliff. It's not like we're looking, I don't think, at Allen Robinson, where, he was an elite player and then all of a sudden literally unplayable. And Dell is very good in his own right, but he doesn't have the body type of an X receiver. Like you're not going to stick, 5'8" Tank Dell or 5'10" Tank Dell, whatever he is, out at X receiver and be like, good luck on that press coverage, bud. You're going to put Nico Collins, all 6'4" of him, out there. Like Nico Collins is never going to leave the field because again, Diggs in his prime, he might be able to play. He would be able to play X receiver for you, but he's not in his prime anymore. You're not going to put him at X receiver. You're going to put Diggs and Dell at the flanker and slot positions. Now they can rotate in, whatever, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But Nico is never coming off the field. He's too good.
No, he's never coming off the field. So I'll move into my next takeaway here. Anthony Richardson. He looks really messy. He looks really messy with the football. I mean, this was something I talked about a lot this offseason. I thought Richardson was a tad overpriced at his cost. I understood the upside with the rushing and the potential and the specifically, with how big he is, he could get a lot of work in the red zone and, get to 10 plus rushing touchdowns this year. But his price was just too high all offseason. I feel like it wasn't talked about enough because we just haven't seen him be good as a passer ever. Like we just haven't seen it in college. He was one of the worst college passers drafted that high that we've ever seen in his first couple NFL games. Very inconsistent as a passer in the preseason, very inconsistent as a passer. But we were like, no, we can still draft him as a top 5 quarterback. And the thing is, people kind of forget that Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, these guys that are elite for fantasy because they have some running ability, also have elite passing ability. Like Jalen Hurts is a great passer. He puts up passing yards a lot. Josh Allen, great passer. Lamar Jackson, he could put up yards as a passer. Anthony Richardson, we had no idea, but we were assuming that he could by drafting him that high, and he can't. It's just simple. It's simply he's not there yet. And could he get there? Yes. He like we mentioned earlier in the show. Ted mentioned it. He played very little games in college. He's still kind of learning the position of quarterback. Could he get there? Absolutely. But is he there yet? No. He looks so hot and cold, so on and off. He makes such dumb decisions a couple times. Like that throw in the end zone, I think it might have been deflected, but it was still like the throw and the trajectory of where it was going before it was deflected was like that was not a good choice. There were 3 Texans defenders right there. Like that was a terrible decision with the football. He's making decisions like that left and right, and while he's gonna have big plays, he's gonna have some big games. He's going to have these games where he leaves you with like 8 fantasy points because he threw multiple picks and just didn't get in the end zone and didn't look good on the ground. Anthony Richardson is looking messy right now. And for now, he's a low-end QB1, not a top 5 guy.
It didn't make sense to me when he was being drafted as I think he was like QB4 or something like that. It didn't make sense to me why Kyler Murray was going at QB9 and he was going at QB4.
Kyler Murray was like my guy this year. I had no idea.
Same.
It made no sense to me. There was no sense at all. I had Kyler Murray ranked far ahead of Richardson. I didn't get it at all.
My bold prediction was Kyler Murray was going to be QB1.
Woo!
The QB1. It was bold. That was a bold prediction.
Yeah,
but,
bold predictions.
It never made sense to me because all the arguments that people can make for Richardson, you could make the same arguments for Kyler, but he's shown more in NFL games than Richardson has. So it's like, I don't understand why like those two should have been flipped,
100%. Couldn't agree more.
All right. We are running up on our time. So just give me, what are you guys excited to see tonight?
Ooh, that's
I need about 40 points from Josh Allen, James Cook, and
hey, that's doable.
Robinson.
That is doable.
That's doable.
Yeah, I'm in a home league right now where I need Jane Daniels. I'm ahead by 9. I have Jane Daniels, and my dad has Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. So as much as I want to see the breakout from Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase against Washington secondary, I don't want it to happen because then I'm losing my home league.
You're like, just wait one more week. One more game, guys.
One more game of sucking, guys. Then you can be good again at some point. Just suck again tonight.
Just one more time.
Yeah, one more time.
Oh, no, we suck again. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And as always, we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Bye.